Welcome, guys. Today we are doing a prediction for the new AFL season coming up. I had few different ways I wanted to sort of do this, but we are going to just do this from 18th to 1st, and then I will reveal the official ladder. So, first of all, I'll go through each team, why I've placed it in there, and this is not taking into account like injuries and other avenues, of course, as well. So in 18th spot, it probably come to no surprise. That will be the West Coast Eagles. Now, I have them winning one game for the whole year. They could squeeze into maybe three, depending on injuries, as I have said before. One thing to note is just getting Harley Reid and maybe a couple other pieces isn't going to make me drastically put them up to 15th, 16th, even higher. So I think that West Coast will finish 18th again. I can't see it going any other way. And I think the next team is at least a level above them in some regards. And the next team in 17th position, winning four games and 19 losses, is North Melbourne. So North Melbourne will finish 17th, I believe. I don't really see them pushing anything really higher here. So, 4 wins, 19 losses. Still a pretty horrific year. And having Alistair Clarkson there and having like Mackay and all that come out, it's not sort of anything I can see as going to change anything, right? So 17th spot, and in 16th spot we have the Hawks. Hawthorn, for me, will finish 16th. They'll have a pretty good year, 16 wins, 17 losses. They're still building. They'll be very competitive, though, even though they have some of these losses. And I really think they could get up to around 18. Not 18, sorry. I really think that they could get up to like 8 to 9 wins, depending on the draw this year. But, so Hawthorn, for me, are the 16th position. And coming in 15th, which may come as a surprise, but it really shouldn't, will be Geelong. Now, Geelong will finish the year between 7 to 10 wins. I have them at 7 wins, 16 losses with a 93.1% percentage. I think we are in the stage now for Geelong where they will start rebuilding now. And the next team I talk about will be in a really similar spot. And then everyone up from 13th to 12th in the mix for the finals. I got Geelong here. Like I said, I think they're going to go through a rebuilding stage. They still have some really good players. Obviously, they've still got Jeremy Cameron and pieces like that. But I think they'll have a little bit of a down period here for not a full rebuild as such, but they've had some great players throughout the years, and they have been on top for probably the best part of. I think they've missed the finals twice in 20 years, maybe 3 times in 20 years. So, I have them in 15th, and in 14th. This also may come in as a surprise, is Richmond, but it really shouldn't. They are still building for their next push towards finals and things. And I've got them finishing the year 8 wins, 15 losses. I think they could push to maybe 10 or 11 wins here or there. But not getting pumped by teams, but just not having enough power or firepower. I don't think having Tom Lynch is going to change some of these outcomes. Like I said, they could push to 10 or 11 wins and be, sitting 10th or 11th or something like that, but I really don't think so. I also think that they're going through something similar to Geelong. They've had some old players come out, and now they've got some to get some youth back into the group. They have some really young players. They have some good players coming in. So, yeah, that's where I've placed Richmond in 14th position. In 13th position, I have the Western Bulldogs. Now, this will probably be the one that's controversial because they should be a team that's pushing top 4 to top 8, but they are so inconsistent. They have a lot of injuries through most years. So I have them winning 10 games, 13 losses, and at a 97.4% throughout the whole year. So the reason I have them here is that, of course, they're so inconsistent. They are so hard to tip. They are so hard to tip against too, in at the same time. But for me, this is why I would put them there. They could easily probably be in the finals picture with 13 wins, 14 wins or something like that. But I just couldn't, in some of these games, back them in. In 12th position, knowing that I am a big fan of this team, and I have been since I was a kid, is the Essendon Football Club. I got them finishing with one more win than the Western Bulldogs. They could easily have one less or whatever, but I've got them finishing with 11, 12 of 100.1% throughout the year. They could easily have 9 wins. They could easily have a couple more wins. I don't think bringing Mackay and a few other players, Mackay I should say, is going to change the landscape too much for Essendon. I think we're still a fair way off, and I don't think making the finals and losing is what would be best for the football club. So I think the next year and a half, 2 years, we'll be building and hopefully playing some finals maybe the next year in 2025 or 2026. I think we can wait a few more years before they push. I could be wrong. They could be deadly this year, but I am grading them down because I am being unbiased. And so then easily could be, from what I've listed here, 10th. And you'll see how close sort of the race really was for a few teams. But moving on, in 11th spot, I have the Crows. Regardless, Adelaide have got some good players. They've got a really good home ground advantage. They play an exciting brand of football when they're up and about, as we saw last year. I have them at 11 wins, 12 losses, and 100.6%. So just ahead, same wins as Essendon. And it was hard to tip them in interstate games because they were horrific in interstate games where they had to travel to the MCG or Etihad Stadium, Marvel Stadium, I should say, or had to travel up to Brisbane or something like that. So again, they are in a similar spot to Essendon. Maybe a couple more years, and they'll be really ready to push to either top 4 or top 8 sort of stuff. And maybe get a few more pieces around them, and I think they'll be ready to go. But in 10th position, where are they? Here they are. I have the Fremantle Dockers. And I have them finishing with the exact same amount of wins, 11 wins, 12 losses, and 100.9%. So I have these three teams really equal. And Fremantle, like with Adelaide, are very, very good at home. They have maybe a 2, 3, 4 goal advantage at that venue against particular teams. So it really just comes down to that Fremantle are a little bit better travelling team. Essendon and Adelaide aren't the greatest travelling teams. So I would say Fremantle 11 at 10th position could easily pull off 13, 14 wins this year. But yes, I do believe that Fremantle are in the right spot here, and I think they would be pushing to next year, being able to sort of play finals again. In ninth position is the Gold Coast Suns. I'm very hopeful on Gold Coast this year. I do think that having Damien Hardwick as your coach is going to push you up to that competitive advantage. I got them 13 wins, 10 losses, and 107.1%. Missing out on the finals, but being right there for contention. And very well could be having 11 or 10 wins, as a lot of these teams, like I've just named from 13th up, could particularly have. So I could see them being very competitive. They were 1.4% off from playing finals in what I've wrapped up here. But yeah, I have them at that position. Making finals and coming in an 8th spot is the Port Adelaide Football Club. I do think that they will, obviously they scrape in. They'll have a bit of a up and down year, and I've got them winning 13 wins, 10 losses, and 108.5. So that's where I have the power. Look, they're very inconsistent in finals. They're very inconsistent sometimes throughout the year. So yeah, I think that's just sort of where I've got Port Adelaide. Don't really know. Like I said, they could have 15, 16 wins. They could have 3 more wins this year. But I think they had a pretty good year last year. They didn't do great in the finals last year. And I think that 8 spots pretty much, I think the other teams have gone above them now. And I think we will move on to 7th. In 7th spot, we have the Sainers. Again, a pretty similar year to last year. They will be very good. They'll be very bad. They'll be pretty ordinary in times and very elite in sometimes. So, yeah, I've got them in this position. It's not much to say. They finished the year in 13 wins, 10 losses, and 109.3% percentage for the year. So, that is where I'm ranking them here. And so we'll move on to the Swans, who are in 6th position with 13 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw, and 111.7%. Basically, the theory is that they're a very good team at home. They're a very good team. They're actually a very good team. The adage of Brodie Grundy will obviously boost your stocks. So 6th position, and I think they could easily have a few more. They could have a few less. They could get injuries and miss the finals completely. And so let's move on to 5th position, which is the Melbourne Demons. I think they'll miss out on the top 4, and I think this is a pretty good spot to have them. 16 wins, 7 losses, 117.7% throughout the year. Very good team. They'll be very good, and then they easily could be making finals, but due to a draw, has notched them out basically. They have better percentage than the team above them, and so the draw has changed them getting a double chance. So, also to account is that Melbourne for the last 2 years has gone out in double sets. So that was also my reasoning too. I thought that they'll have an alright year, start the year for the first 10 to 12 weeks being really strong, and then sort of fade away in games and not really having that competitive sort of thing. And so let's move into the top 4 of our list. And in coming in 4th spot, I really have high hopes on the Giants this year. I really think they had a really good year last year. And so I've got them finishing 16 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw, 114.44% throughout the year. Look, they're going to be really tough to beat at home. They've had a lot of good players come in. They have added to what they aspired to last season, making a prelim from being outside the top 4. So I think a top 4 is a reasonable push, and I really think that they will be competing throughout the year on a very high level. Coming in third spot is the Blues. I think they are destined to push for the top 4, if not the top 2. And I think anything less would be a failure for the year. Obviously, missing finals would be a failure. But I think third, 17 wins, 6 losses, 112.4%, and really pushing to make a grand final over the next few years, and maybe even winning one and winning that 17th flag. And now we'll move on to the top 2. Obviously, this top 2 is pretty much the same as last year, but we're going to reveal it nonetheless. And in second place, we have the Brisbane Lions with 17 wins, 6 losses, 122% throughout the year. Making a push for a return to a grand final. That would be the goals. They are pretty much the complete team. They have the list. They have everything at their disposal. It's just up for them to sort of execute these things when it matters most. And obviously, at number 1, minor premiers again, it's the Collingwood Football Club. Look, not much to say, except they will probably be minor premiers again and be pushing for a grand final, a deep September push. And yeah, that is my prediction for the home and away seasons. So I will talk out the qualifying finals, and then I will show you how I've sort of mapped it out. So let's go through the second qualifying final, which would be Brisbane versus Carlton at the Gabba. I would have Brisbane winning this game and advancing to a prelim. Due to it being at the Gabba, it's nearly a 4 to 5 goal advantage, and that's where I would have that. And in the first elimination final, which will be Melbourne versus Port Adelaide at the MCG, I would have Melbourne notching this one and winning and breaking that 2-year hoodoo, even though it's not a double chance. But nonetheless, I would have Melbourne moving on to the first semi-final, and we would have Carlton in the second semi-final. So now, Collingwood versus the Giants at the MCG, probably a Saturday night game, unless they do a Sunday night game or a Sunday afternoon game, and that would make us have a semi-final of GWS versus the Melbourne Football Club. And then the next game would be the second elimination final, which would be Sydney versus St Kilda. I would have Sydney because this would be in Sydney at the SCG, and this would be Sydney by about 12 to 15 points or something around there. They're very close teams. So I had Sydney notching this one, and we would have an elimination final. The second semi will be Carlton versus Sydney. So we'll do the second one first. So Carlton, Sydney, MCG. I will have Carlton winning this one by about 24 points. They're a team that wants to be pushing. We're not taking into account injuries or anything like that. But this is what I would predict. And in the first semi-final, we have the Giants, Melbourne at probably Giants Stadium. I would have the Giants winning this game. I think they're a little bit... they're really a good team. They really have a lot what teams need. And we would be setting up the first preliminary final would be Carlton Collingwood at a huge Friday night game, probably over 100,000 people at least 90 plus, and then we would have a Brisbane GWS, pretty much having the same four teams from last year finishing in the last four of the year, and Brisbane GWS from the Gabba, probably a Saturday night game. These are tough ones to pick, but more or less it's really just more about taking the best bet here, and I do think that Collingwood and Brisbane will be making another grand final. We'll be having another rematch, and this will take it back to the early 2000s where Collingwood and Brisbane went back and forth for a few years. So, and I'm actually going to back Brisbane in the grand final to win by under a goal. This year's grand final was a really good grand final. Collingwood could easily win it. It's just, I think Brisbane might get a bit of redemption this year and win it. So, let me know if you guys agree with this list that I'm about to drag over here. And this is what we ended up finishing with. So, it's obviously, predictions are hard, tipping's hard. We have, let's just briefly talk about some teams that what they can improve on. West Coast, they just need to keep drafting. They need to keep trying to make things happen, and they're in for a long rebuild, I think. North Melbourne are just a level above West Coast, but 2 levels below a Hawthorn, Geelong, or a Richmond, and they have us also in for a very long haul. In fact, even though North Melbourne are ahead in this regard and probably a level above at the moment, I could see West Coast overtaking them in maybe 3 years. I'm not bullish on North Melbourne's recovery here, and same with West Coast. It's going to be a long time before you see them even pushing for top 8. Hawthorn, real quick, they'll be very competitive. Could easily have 10 wins. They'll be beating teams that are above them, like Geelong, Richmond, Essendon, Bulldogs, Adelaide. They could beat all those teams. On paper, they shouldn't, but they have a very good system. And Geelong and Richmond, I spoke about it briefly before. They're in this little mini rebuilding phase, and that will take some time. And I think in the next 2 to 3 years, we could see them pushing back up to that top 8 position and competing in the finals. Western Bulldogs, look, they're just too inconsistent for me to sort of really rank and tip, so I've placed them at 13th. Essendon, I've maybe been less lenient or too lenient on them, but I think they're either a 12th to 13th or 11th team. Adelaide could easily be playing finals. There are games where they could have won, but I just, I'm backing what my knowledge of football sort of tells, and my football says they're another year. They're a little bit ahead of Essendon in terms of development. So I do think that they would be pushing for a final spot in 2025. But I think this year, if they were to make it, Melbourne, they would be versing Melbourne. We would place Adelaide and Port Adelaide pretty much. That would be the spot that you would change if things went their way, obviously, in the season. And I think they would get obliterated. Being under that pressure that early, the extra years, just making it doesn't mean it's a good thing. It's not a good thing to go into a final and just go in there and say, hey, we made it, that's good. Obviously, they want to make it, but it may be better to not make it, if that makes sense. Fremantle, similar spot. I think they're right there. I think they lost a little bit over the off-season. I think they got a few more years to just sort of build before they could. I could see them going a couple of years of just falling outside their top 8 and then just pushing straight to the top 4. We've seen teams do it. Same with Adelaide. And Gold Coast, probably the surprise of the list is having Gold Coast up this high. I just think they're due. I think they're due to have some good things go up there. And I think if it doesn't go well, and say they finish below the Bulldogs or something like that, you could see this team just in turmoil pretty much. But I do think they'll be pushing. They're obviously just outside the top 8, not far off it. And I think next year they would be pushing 6th, 7th if they do some good things in the off-season of 2024. Port Adelaide scratching in by the skin of their teeth basically in the last game. And yeah, look, their list is quite good, quite young, and they've got some veterans. But I just don't think they're going to do much in September like they haven't done for a very long time. St Kilda, similar spot to Port Adelaide, but I think they're a little bit better of a team. A little bit better system, which will reduce the losses in some regards, and I think they will finish around the same spot they sort of finished last year, 6th, 7th, wherever they finished last year. Sydney, I think they'll have a great year. I think they'll be really competitive again. They'll take it up and beat teams like Melbourne. Everyone above them they can beat. It's just sort of down to the knowledge that I know. Melbourne 5th, they're easily top 4, but I've just got them finishing outside. Giants, like I said, they'll be pushing the next few years after 2024 for a grand final reappearance. Carlton will be pushing for a grand final reappearance, and I think Brisbane and Collingwood are going to have some really big battles over the next few years. But let me know if you like the video, guys. I really see if you agree with my prediction. If I've done something too low or not high enough, the ones I'm expecting are the Western Bulldogs, maybe Adelaide, Fremantle, Gold Coast, and maybe putting Essendon down below those teams. But let me know what you think, and I'll catch you in the next one.